I had been staring at the clock for over an hour, waiting for her call, the one she promised she'd make after her shift ended. It was our small ritual, her voice at the end of a long day, telling me she was tired but safe, maybe sharing a quick story from the hospital, or just sighing into the phone in that way that made me feel like she was finally home. But that night, the silence stretched too long. My thumb hovered over the call button, a tiny hesitation tugging at me as if my instincts knew something my mind refused to accept. When I finally dialed, my chest tightened with the anticipation of hearing her familiar, exhausted tone. The ringing felt endless, each chime echoing in the empty kitchen. Then it stopped. A voice answered, but it wasn't hers. It was a man's, low, calm, and far too casual. "Hello?" he said, as though he'd been expecting someone to call. For a split second, my brain scrambled for logic. Maybe a doctor, maybe a coworker, maybe she left her phone at the nurse's station. But then I caught something in his tone, a warmth that didn't belong in a stranger's greeting. "Who is this?" I asked, my voice tighter than I wanted it to be. He hesitated, just enough to make my stomach drop. "She's busy right now," he said slowly, like he was choosing each word carefully. "Busy? At 1:17 a.m.? My mind raced. Was there an emergency? Was she still in the hospital? But his next sentence cut through every layer of my denial. "She'll call you later." Not, "I'll tell you called." Not, "She's with a patient." Just a vague dismissal, as if I were the one intruding. My grip on the phone tightened, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. "Where is she?" I pressed, the question escaping like a breath I'd been holding all night. He chuckled softly, and the sound made my skin crawl. "You don't need to worry about that." And then, click, the line went dead. I stared at the screen, her name still glowing on it, my reflection staring back at me in the black glass. My hands were shaking, but it wasn't just anger. It was a slow, creeping realization that whatever world I thought we shared might have just cracked wide open in a single phone call. If you've ever laid next to someone who made you feel completely alone, then maybe this story isn't just mine. It's ours. And if that's true, subscribe, because stories like this deserve to be heard by those who understand. I stood there in my kitchen, phone still in my hand, the hum of the refrigerator, the only sound filling the space where her voice should have been. That call had ended less than a minute ago, but the weight of it pressed on me like an anchor tied to my chest. I want to call again, desperately, but something in the way he had spoken, so calm, so sure, made me pause. My mind tried to cling to logic. Maybe she had dropped her phone. Maybe he was a security guard or a co-worker picking up for her. But the truth was, I knew her better than anyone. If she had been busy at work, if it had been an emergency, she would have texted me something, anything. I scrolled through our messages, hoping to find reassurance in the rhythm of our conversations. But the last text from her was hours ago. Just a quick, "I'll call you when I'm out," at 6:12 p.m. No follow-ups, no updates. My thumb hovered over her contact, but instead of calling, I opened my browser and typed in the GPS tracker app we'd set up years ago when she lost her phone during a night shift. It wasn't about trust back then. It was just practical. But tonight, it felt like a test I didn't want to take. When the map loaded, my stomach dropped. She wasn't anywhere near the hospital. The little blue that pulsed in a part of town we never went to, an area lined with small apartments and dim streetlights, miles away from her supposed shift. I stared at the screen, my pulse pounding in my temples, a knot of nausea tightening in my gut. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, that she had a reason, that maybe she was covering for someone or visiting a patient off duty. But the longer I looked at that, the more it felt like it was marking the exact spot where my trust had been buried. I didn't even realize I was walking toward the door until my hand was on the knob, my keys already in my pocket. I needed to see. I needed to know, because in that moment, the not knowing was killing me faster than the truth ever could. I don't care about algorithms. I care about the people listening to this who are bleeding silently like I did. If you've ever held back tears just to protect someone who didn't protect you, subscribe. You don't have to do this alone anymore. I don't remember locking the door behind me. I don't remember the moment my car engine roared to life, or the way the tires crunched over the gravel in our driveway. What I do remember is the cold by the steering wheel under my hands, and the way my breath came shallow, uneven, like my body was bracing for a hit it couldn't see coming. The streets blurred past, every green light feeling like it was daring me to keep going, to push forward toward whatever waited for me at that pulsing blue. My mind was chaos. Images of her smiling at me that morning clashed with the sound of that man's voice on the phone, smooth and unfamiliar, carrying the weight of something I couldn't yet name. I kept glancing at the GPS, the dot, barely moving now, almost mocking me with its stillness. The neighborhood I was entering was quiet, too quiet. Street lamps flickered overhead, casting long shadows across narrow sidewalks. I passed small houses with curtains drawn tight, a few dimly lit windows showing silhouettes of lives that weren't about to unravel. I slowed as the pen on my screen told me I was close. My stomach twisted hard when I realized I'd been here once before, months ago, dropping her off after she said she was visiting a friend from nursing school. At the time, I hadn't thought much of it. Now, every memory of that day felt like a breadcrumb I'd ignored. My headlights swept across a row of parked cars until they landed on one I knew instantly. Her car, there was, sitting under a tree, its windshield dotted with leaves. Engine off. My heart pounded in my ears as I pulled over, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles whitened. I killed the engine but didn't move. I just sat there in the dark, watching her car like it might suddenly explain itself to me. But there were no answers. Only the faint glow of light spilling from the second-floor window of the building across the street, and somewhere deep inside, the gnawing certainty that she was up there with him, not thinking of me at all. I stepped out of my car, the cold air hitting me like a slap, sharpening every nerve in my body. My feet fell heavy against the pavement, each step toward that building echoing like a countdown I couldn't stop. The closer I got, the more that second-floor window seemed to pull me in, like it was a stage, and I was about to see a performance meant for anyone but me. The curtain was only half drawn, just enough to let a strip of light spill out and dance against the night air. I told myself not to look, that I could turn around right now, get back in the car, and pretend this moment never happened. But my body didn't listen. My eyes lifted. And there it was, a shadow moving inside, not hurried or panicked, but comfortable, familiar, like they'd done this before. My chest tightened when I caught the unmistakable shape of her. Her hair pulled back the way she always wore it after shift, her scrubs hanging loosely from her frame. She wasn't alone. There was a man there, too, standing so close their bodies almost blurred together. He reached out, touched her arm, and she laughed. Soft, easy, the kind of laugh she hadn't given me in months. It felt like someone had reached into my chest and twisted everything inside. I stayed there, half hidden by the shadow of a tree, watching something I had no right to watch, yet couldn't tear myself away from. My mind scrambled for explanations. Maybe it was a co-worker, maybe they were just talking, but every instinct in me screamed otherwise. I could see the way she looked at him, the way her body leaned in without hesitation. It wasn't friendship. It was something I wasn't supposed to see, something she kept carefully locked away from me. And in that moment, staring at that lit window, I knew that the version of my wife I'd been holding onto was gone. The woman up there wasn't mine anymore. Maybe she never had been. I stood frozen for what felt like hours beneath that dim second-floor window, my pulse thundering so loudly in my ears I could barely hear anything else. The cold had seeped through my coat, but I didn't care. My focus was locked on the shapes moving in that golden slice of light. Every now and then, her silhouette would vanish from the frame, only to reappear a second later, closer to him, closer than I had seen her stand to me in months. My heart didn't just ache. It raged, beating with a strange rhythm of betrayal and disbelief. And yet, I wasn't satisfied with just shadows. I needed more. I needed to see her, to hear her voice in this place, to prove to myself that I wasn't losing my mind. My legs moved before I told them to, carrying me toward the entrance of the building like I was stepping into a dream I didn't want to have. Each footfall on the concrete stairwell echoed in the hollow air, and with every step, my chest got tighter, my breathing shallower. I passed peeling paint, flickering fluorescent bulbs, and the faint smell of something cooking behind closed doors. None of it mattered. All I could think about was the warmth of that lit room at the end of the hall and the two figures inside it. When I reached her door, I didn't knock. Not yet. I stood there, inches from a thin barrier that separated me from the truth I wasn't ready to hear. Voices spilled to the cracks, hers, soft and low, and his deeper, almost protective. The sound hit me harder than I expected, like my stomach had dropped out from under me. I strained to hear, desperate for any word that might explain, but the more I listened, the worse it got. They were laughing. That same soft, easy laughter I had just seen through the window. It was intimate, comfortable. My fingers hovered above the doorknob, trembling, and for a moment I imagined just walking in, ending the guessing game, tearing the mask off this night. But then a thought gripped me. Once I opened that door, my life would never return to the way it was. There would be no taking it back, no pretending. So I stood there, drowning in the silence between their voices, my hand inches from the truth, knowing I was seconds away from shattering every illusion I'd been living under. My hand lingered over the doorknob so long that it felt like an extension of my own trembling body, the metal cold against my skin, as if warning me of the frost that would seep into my bones once I crossed that threshold. My mind was a storm. Every memory of her smile, her tired voice saying she loved me after a long shift, the quiet dinners where we sat side by side without words, all of it colliding with the sound of her laughter echoing through that thin barrier. That laughter, which used to belong to me, now lived in the air between her and someone else. My breath came in shallow bursts, the hallway spinning slightly, and I realized my legs had gone weak beneath me. I could hear the faint clink of glasses inside, the low hum of conversation that didn't belong to a hospital break room or a patient's bedside. It was a soundtrack of a different life she hadn't invited me into. I imagined her sitting cross-legged on the couch, maybe her hair undone, maybe wearing the same scrubs she claimed were drenched in exhaustion hours ago, but now they carried the ease of comfort, not fatigue. The smell of something faintly sweet drifted out from the cracks in the door, something unfamiliar in our home but familiar here, an unspoken sign that she'd shared meals with him before. My fingers tightened, and I could feel the blood pounding in my wrists, a rhythm that screamed, "Open it now." But I couldn't, not because I didn't want the truth, but because I knew the truth would tear through me like glass. Once I saw her eyes meet mine in this place, I would never be able to unsee it. My mind began painting the image before I even turned the knob. Her startled gasp, his hand on her knee, the air between them charged with something I hadn't felt from her in months. The thought made my chest cave in on itself. I stepped back, barely breathing, leaning against the wall opposite her door, my eyes locked on that chipwood like it might open itself and confess. And then, faintly, I heard her voice again, lower now, almost a whisper, and his laughter followed, warm and unguarded. It wasn't the laughter of a stranger to her. It was the kind you only give to someone who already has a part of you. My stomach twisted until I thought I might be sick. I had come here chasing proof. But proof wasn't just knocking. It was screaming through the cracks, and still, I couldn't bring myself to push that door open. I stayed there, suspended in a moment that stretched into eternity, knowing that one step forward would break the life I thought we had into pieces so sharp I might never recover. If this sounds like your life, stop pretending you're fine. Stop hiding it like I did. Subscribe, not for me, but for every person who thought they were crazy, until the truth finally shattered them. You're safe here. We see you. I stood there, my heart slamming against my ribs, so hard it felt like my own body was urging me to either run or break through that door, but my feet wouldn't move. The hallway air was thick, stale, yet every sound from inside sliced through it like a razor. I could hear the scrape of a chair leg against the floor, the muted clink of glass, and then his voice, low, familiar in a way that made my blood turn to ice. It wasn't just the sound of another man speaking. It was the ease in his tone, the kind of casual warmth you only give someone you've grown comfortable with. My hands trembled so badly I had to press them into my thighs, willing them to still, but the tremors only grew worse when her laughter, soft, breathy, intimate, slipped under the door and wrapped itself around my throat. I realized with a nauseating clarity that I had heard that exact laugh before, but never for me. It was a different register, lighter, almost playful, stripped of the heaviness I'd come to associate with her after long shifts. I wanted to believe there was some innocent explanation, an old friend, a co-worker she trusted, but the GPS history still burned in my pocket, every ping a nail sealing the coffin of my denial. My mind spun in rapid flashes. The night she came home late and wouldn't meet my eyes, the morning she left before sunrise claiming an emergency, the way her phone was always face down now. It was all here, colliding into a truth I could no longer outrun. I imagined opening that door, her head whipping toward me, eyes wide, the mask shattering in real time. Him, caught mid-laugh, mid-gesture, frozen in the guilt they could never explain away. But what terrified me more than the confrontation was the silence that might follow, because once the noise stopped, I'd have nothing left but the cold reality that the woman I loved had been slipping away piece by piece, giving what was once mine to someone else. I swallowed hard, my throat dry, and leaned close to the door, closing my eyes just to focus on the sounds, to memorize the proof I was too afraid to see. And in that moment, something in me shifted. Not a decision to forgive, not yet a decision to leave, but the understanding that whatever I found when I finally did step inside, the life I had been living up until now was already gone. The handle turned with a slow, deliberate motion that felt like it lasted a lifetime. My chest tightened, every muscle bracing for impact, as if I was about to be struck by something I couldn't dodge. The door opened just wide enough for her to step out, and in that first sliver of space, I saw her face. Flushed, startled, but not from seeing me. No. It was the expression of someone who had been pulled from a world she didn't expect me to witness. Behind her, in the dim glow of the room, his silhouette loomed for a fraction of a second before retreating further into the shadows, as if erasing himself would erase what I'd heard and felt. Her scrubs were wrinkled, but not in the way hours in a hospital wrinkle them. These creases were careless, inconsistent, telling a story that didn't match the sterile order of surgery rooms. And then there was a faint trace of cologne clinging to her, foreign and sharp, cutting through familiar scent of disinfectant I had come to associate with her. My stomach churned, not from jealousy alone, but from the clarity of how long this had been building. She didn't speak at first, just searched my face as if she was calculating how much I knew, how much she needed to explain or hide. I could feel my heartbeat in my temples, loud enough I was sure she could hear it too. I wanted to demand answers, to shout every suspicion I'd swallowed for months, but the words lodged in my throat, blocked by a grief too heavy to force out. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and instinctively, she placed her hand over it, not to answer, but to shield it from me. That tiny gesture told me more than any confession could. It was him. I knew it, and yet, in that suspended moment, I didn't confront her. I didn't ask, because deep down, I understood something brutal. Asking meant opening a door I couldn't close again, and stepping into a truth I wasn't sure I was ready to survive. But as she brushed past me, murmuring something about being tired, I realized the truth had already stepped into me, and it wasn't going anywhere till you've come this far. That means something. You felt this. You lived it. Maybe not this exact story, but your own version of it. So if you're still here, still breathing under the weight of something they'll never apologize for, hit subscribe, because no one should walk through this kind of betrayal alone. And if no one else says it, I will. I'm glad you're still here.